Welcome in to the Energy Tech Podcast, where today we're joined again by guest co-host Arlen Nipper, where we'll be discussing from the black hole to the connected operation. Mike, welcome in. Arlen, welcome in to Cannonsburg.
Hey, Jeff, thanks for that intro. I am your co-host, Mike, with the Energy Tech Podcast in Cannonsburg, Pennsylvania, here at OpSite Energy headquarters with, again, my esteemed guest. And it's great to have him, Mr. Arlen Nipper. Arlen, thank you for joining us here.
Mike, thanks. I'm looking forward to it. Great.
Yeah, awesome to have you here on the Energy Tech. You know, we're covering ground with you because, you know, you're number one, you're a sought after speaker in our industry, especially when it comes to IoT and automation, industrial automation. You know, your work with the Eclipse Foundation, your work with all the different groups that are out there. So to capture your time for us is a big deal. We really appreciate you being here. And today we're going to talk about from a black hole to connected operations. And I think we're going to lay this out for you. So if you're a listener tuning in, we're going to cover that. But before we get into that, Arlen, you know, what kind of leads me into this is you posted something on LinkedIn the other day. And you alluded to this technology black hole that we're going to spend some time on. And now you reminded me just before we started, I did comment on that. And when we're talking about a black hole to connected operations, what we're talking about is black hole data that goes absolutely nowhere and gets sucked in somewhere, but absolutely nowhere in the black hole. And I've seen this in the industry, both in different verticals. I've seen this potentially in oil and gas. I've seen it in data center. I've seen it in food and beverage. I saw this at a packaging plant facility. I even saw this in a rail facility, you know, where it was critical that rail cars get counted a certain way, you know. And you've had lots of experience. Aside from this new one that you were probably going to talk about, I mean, in your experience, Arlen, what has been your biggest, I'd say maybe I call it the black hole experience?
Well, it's black hole, and it's the maintenance of legacy systems that are no longer maintainable. And they're still sitting there. They're still trying to make them work, but they're not providing any information up to an enterprise level. But I think the black holes that you and I are talking about were the equipment that is installed in the field. And again, I think what I posted on LinkedIn is that I was doing a site survey. So we in inductive automation, Opto22, they're working with the state of Indiana, trying to help small to medium manufacturers. So there's this, you know, large tier one automotive company that just stamped auto parts, just, you know, huge. They had, you know, stamping machines that were 2 stories tall. Right. And we were walking around and I noticed, you know, there were on the transformers, they had Siemens electric meters, and they had, you know, HVAC system that you could be monitoring. So we got into the conference room and they go, well, Arlen, we don't have any sensors. You know, we're going to have to buy and re-sensorize the factory. Yeah. I go, well, wait a minute. You know, I'm toured the factory, you've got all of these sensors out there already. They go, well, Arlen, no, we can't use those. They're already connected to another system. Yeah. And I go, well, what? So we walk out there and they go, well, see all of that, it's connected to this Johnson Control BACnet system. Yeah. And I go, okay, well, who's looking at that? They go, oh, well, we have a contractor, excuse me, that looked at that. Well, we got to looking into it, and the contractor had been out of business for like 3 years. Yeah. So my point was that they weren't utilizing those sensors. They were all connected into this piece of equipment so we were able to take Opto22, we're running Ignition Edge, reconnect all those sensors, and we had all that data going in probably less than a couple of days. Wow. So I think if we all, like you said, if we look around, if equipment isn't providing your sensor data at the enterprise level where you need it, I think what we're going to point out is there is technology to remove those black holes and do something with that sensor information, not not buying new sensors. You use the ones you've got.
Right, and I think that's you're right, Arlen. So I walked into I did a site visit for a data center in Canada, and at the data center they had these old Badger meters that are no longer being made. They're sitting there. They had the same power monitors that were there, no longer being made. You couldn't find the manufacturer. We dropped Ignition and used OnLogic as a product and a protocol converter, and we managed to connect those in minutes. It wasn't like it took lots of huddling. We're talking about simply connecting, adding that protocol conversion, and applying an edge device and putting that right into ignition, and within minutes we can see those values. Yeah, and I think that so many companies, especially in energy technologies, those spaces, they miss out on those opportunities because, to me, all data can be valuable, right? Not just specific parts of the data.
Right. And if you, so I'll have to look, I've got a blog post on Cirruslink.
Okay.
So I actually went through and literally detailed how to get your serial device, your Modbus devices. So millions and millions of Modbus serial devices out there, RS-232, and people go, oh, well, it's not Ethernet, we can't connect to it. And so I was able to use a Moxa or Ethernet to RS-232 device. They cost maybe all of $50 on Amazon. Converter. And then go through Ignition, and I configured Modbus RTU over Ethernet.
Right.
And so when that hit the Ethernet to RS-232, that went out RS-232. And I think I even wrote it up to where I also in that same network, I had multi-drop RS-45 Modbus, and I was able to bring it in fine.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I saw with the old water metering, was that multi-drop RS-45 on a daisy chain, and it was the same scenario. And all it took was that conversion, just like you're describing. It was almost it was easier. The data center group said, we've had 4 different companies come and try to do this, and nobody's done it. So the IDM team, one of the partners for OpSite Energy, jumped in and within minutes had it talking, came back and refined some of the things they wanted to do in Ignition, and now it's deployed in 3 data centers there in Toronto. And again, this was all because of the Blackhole stuff that was sitting there that they thought was just dumb. You know, that's not the case.
Well, and again, most, going back, I've been in the industry for 46 years now, and there are like 4 to 20 milliamp transmitters that Rosemont, Honeywell, that they've made these and they're made to last for 50, 60 years. There's no reason to go replace a 4 to 20 milliamp transmitter. And now we've got technology using the HARP protocol that's probably in your 4 to 20 milliamp transmitter to get multiple process variables, to get status information. We have customers now that are starting to deploy LoRaWAN. So now that you can get to those dark sites. So if you've got a tank setting, in the back of a refinery, and you go, man, I don't want to put I don't have time to run conduit out there and all that. You can put in LoRaWAN. If you have manual valves in your facility now, and instead of having an operator go out, 5 times a day or every time before you start your process to see all of the manual valve alignments, then now there's a LoRaWAN,
a LOXI
sensor.
That's right.
You can put that on. There's a very large oil company that deployed 5,000 of those. And now they have manual valves, but they know their position.
Yeah, exactly. So you basically taking either Blackhole or dumb equipment, as we will say, and give it some life and see some values. And now you've created a set of data that you otherwise didn't have, that either a lot of times, Arlen, it doesn't just give you an operational advantage, but when you do it, it gives you the competitive advantage, which in the case with the data center, it gave them an hourly or incremental water consumption competitive advantage that they could show and demonstrate from the data center perspective.
And the same in Indiana, they had no idea how much power they were using.
Yeah.
They paid the bill, but they didn't. So we brought in the power usage and basically graphed that in Ignition.
Yeah.
And literally, like the next week, we did another site visit, and they're going, literally, they hadn't seen where the peaks were coming and all of that. So their demand charges were killing them.
Yeah.
Because they were starting multiple compressors or presses at the same time, where if they staged those, they never set that peak load, and they're 30-40% power savings.
I do notice that, Arlen, in every industry, a lot of these building the maintenance management of BMS, EPMS, your same thing for energy and power management systems. They tend to roll off into those, not picking on them, but like a Johnson Controls type box that is a black box of information that no one ever sees.
Well, ironically, in another life at Arcom, I designed the single board computer in the Metasys 50 Johnson Control.
Okay.
So I can tell you that that's 28-year-old technology. So it was probably time to replace that BACnet system anyway.
Yeah. So let's kind of chart this a little bit. Let's show the Blackhole, man. He's got I saw Arlen, you built this just before the show, which I think I watched you do this, and I think what you're, as much as I know you did this real quick, but in my mind, here's what I think. It's easy for a company to create their own black hole. Like this is how how
easy
they do
it
it.
is. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
it is. And they do it because there are some things that they're not doing at the beginning, or they have legacy operations they've taken on or they've absorbed. In energy space, it's very common, for oil and gas companies to merger, to M&A a facility, or they have lots of possibility with wells, production wells. But what they're inheriting is this black hole of equipment that's sitting out there, right?
Well, I think, to get that in, I was talking. Steve Heckman is the CEO of Inductive Automation, and he and I were actually talking after I did this presentation at ICC on black holes.
Yeah,
and we're saying, the technical debt of trying to maintain a legacy system, it's not. There's no ROI on that. In fact, it becomes a money pit instead of a black hole.
Right. Yeah, so you're sinking costs year over year when you do that, right? So kind of walk us through, Arlen. I know you've got a couple of slides maybe, but, you've got this, you got a black hole where it begins. I mean, and you said it earlier, just a technical debt. But where do you think the issue is? I mean, is it, I've got legacy equipment. What do you think keeps organizations locked in that way?
Well, you've got to have the resources to go look at it. I mean, everybody, we all have a day job, especially when it comes to automation. And so, where do you find that time or the resources to go out and just do the investigation? And that's maybe where they get a hold of, inductive automation. We've got 4,500 system integrators that we could probably set you up with, and at least go take a look at what you've got, because it's not the sensors so much as it is the systems. The sensors will last and last and last. We can still interface to a digital contact. We can provide you an interface to an analog, to a 4 to 20 milliamp, to a motor operated valve, to a control valve, to all of that. We've got the technology to go find that and install it and make it more modern. But where do you get the bandwidth to go do that?
Yeah, you're right. And I also think, Arlen, sometimes organizations get a false prescription. What I mean by that is that they get pitched an idea that OT is easy, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, that's easy. And so I was hoping you can kind of guide us through that, because there's times where, and even systems integrators can be guilty of that. Of, well, it's easy. We can connect this. We can connect that. Well, we can do this, or we can add this. Meanwhile, all they're really doing is adding to the technical debt that already exists.
Well, true. You don't want an integrator that goes in and goes, well, we're going to do it this way because that's the way we've done it for the last 25 years.
Yeah.
Definitely, you would want to be very careful of that. But I think we're guilty. Even the all of the major hyperscalers,
right?
And, or the service providers like AWS, Azure,
your hyperscalers,
Google Cloud Platform, Salesforce. So they're going to come in, and especially if I'm sitting in an audience and the salesman comes in and goes, man, if you take it to our cloud, we can do this and we can do this and
sure,
all of this. And so you're sitting and looking at this going, gee, I should be jumping on the bandwagon here. So, here I'm in the back of the room, Mike's in the back of the room. You raise your hand and say, okay, well, how can we, really take advantage of this? And so invariably, if he's a good sales guy, I said, well, Arlen, Mike, it looks simple, so we'll just connect to your OT data.
Right.
It looks simple, right?
Yeah.
Man, Mike, that's easy. See that little blue line? It's done.
Cloud. Yeah.
But, in reality, we've all followed this through. And what it is that little blue line, I'll draw it out here, becomes, when it comes to implementation, go, well, really, Mike, or what we meant is you've got the capability to connect to a stream, and you have to write a little bit of Python code, and then maybe that goes to a data store for a little bit when you have to write some JavaScript, and maybe that goes into another database that you run a Lambda, that you get that in, and fine, that's your little blue line right there, right?
Right.
That's untenable, and a lot of companies are finding that IT down to OT doesn't work. So you've got to have SCADA. And it's funny, inductive automation and Cirruslink both went through this thing where Gartner was interviewing us for
the Magic Quadrant.
The Magic Quadrant.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I came up with the introduction to this slide, because they said, well, you're not going to be on the Gartner
list
IoT quadrant because you do SCADA. And Don Pierce and I are both going, what? You got to be kidding. No, you can't. If you do SCADA, you don't do IIoT. And
okay.
We're going, okay, really?
Right.
But regardless, the reality is that getting OT data reliably, getting it a single source of truth, all of that, it is difficult without the right tools.
Right.
And those tools have to give you the ability to decouple. They have to give you the ability to start creating a single source of truth from the edge at the equipment. And again, forget about cloud, forget about all of that. If you can't go to that crusty old SCADA manager and convince him it's a better, faster, more secure, more scalable, more available operational system, first and foremost, why would he even upgrade? Why would he change?
So Arlen, define a decoupling a minute, so that way, typically in our audience, we'll have, you've got some OT directors, you've got some SCADA folks, but if I'm a mid manager in production and I want to decouple my system, the best way I can describe that for me is that actually I got the term from another podcaster named Walker Reynolds. He used the term nailing your furniture to the floor when you're coupled together in your architecture, mm-hmm. right?
Yep.
So in terms of decoupling, you're not doing that, right?
Right. So you're using a technology and again, we would all like our equipment to be to the point where it could just publish information.
Right.
MQTT, Sparkplug, or maybe some other technology, but
right.
We're not there yet. And we all live in a brownfield world, no matter how even in greenfield, we live
right.
in a brownfield world. So really what we're talking about is using the appropriate edge of network technology where we can move our polling from a central location down to a 1-foot Ethernet cable. Boom, we can poll high speed. Now that lets us gather all that data higher than any way we would do it from a central SCADA system. And then we can start publishing that from the edge. So that's really decoupling. Now we're not connecting all of that equipment hard coded to a central SCADA system.
Right.
We've decoupled it at every edge point. And even in factories, you know, our footprint in manufacturing for Cirruslink has gone up probably 30% of our market share right now. And we have companies decoupling the cells in a factory.
Yes. Yeah, that's very common where you've got an OEM that drops a package that doesn't talk to anybody but itself, right?
Yep.
So if I'm on the manufacturing cell, I'm an OEM, I provide this extruder device, or I handle this oven, or I handle this unit. And that's just in manufacturing. In energy, in oil and gas, it's the same thing. I have a skid. I have a bubble tower. I have a specific unit. One of the big ones that I think is notorious are these pump-off controllers that sit out alone, that you go out and still collect the data, but they want you to own that part. It's legacy and coupled there, right? So I think that's the point, is that in manufacturing, it's these cell units. In oil and gas, that's our skid. That's this, that's that.
Right. So anyway, the tools are there. And if you did these, if you decouple, look at providing a single source of truth, now you're ready. You're going to go to production in superior OT. Now you can look at IT. And now you are in the driver's seat of dictating how you do it. So, you know, and anybody can send in a message to us and say I was wrong, but I have never seen an IT down to OT project work successfully. Never.
That's right. No,
but if you enable your OT with technology and then they go to the cloud, then that becomes successful.
Right. And so let's kind of go about that, Arlen. So, hey, it's not easy. So you mentioned the first step here is getting close to the data at the edge. You would say, does that rank high in the priority first?
Yeah. Okay. So I'll give you another actual example. Our first big customer was Plains Midstream.
Okay.
They had 300 booster stations. They're a midstream, you know. So, and it had been through acquisition. They had some of BP and all that. So Brian Engburst was the SCADA manager. He goes, Arlen, we can't get around fast enough. My operators, the modus operandi is they send a valve open command and they have a stopwatch and they push it. And if the valve doesn't go in transit in a minute, then call somebody.
Wow.
Well, that's stress on the operators. I mean, I don't know how they, you know. So in our journey, though, they spent probably a year and a half going out in the field and auditing what was in their PLCs. They didn't know.
Yeah.
And so if you're going to do that, you might as well take the time to put an edge device there, document it, get it all contextualized, and now you're not in technical debt. Now you're in good shape.
Right. Okay. So we're saying, might as well get out there, get that deployed at the edge, right? Even if it is, like you said, even if it's greenfield, brownfield, the point is you really want that as close as you can get it. Right. Number one. Once I shape that, I have to have a strategy of decoupling. So it sounds more like a strategy and less about specific parts.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So,
and you've got a lot. I mean, if you look at our ecosystem, you have a lot to choose from edge, you know, compute platforms to edge of network software like Ignition, to bringing it into Ignition like a gateway or Ignition Cloud, and then, you know, taking it to something like the Snowflake Data Cloud platform.
So you would say that this is more about a strategic approach and less about a flavor of product, right?
Yes.
So it's more about that because you mentioned earlier in the ecosystem. I mean, Opto 22, great product. You've got lots of lines of implementation there for Opto 22. It's Rio, the Groove, Epic. You can implement each one of those. Rio for power. So there's lots of room there. While at the same time, you may, you can push that product anywhere in your field, especially if it's oil and gas. I think.
Right.
You
Now,
know, so
and then there's, if you are looking at greenfield, right? You got a choice of, you know, one of the major flow computer manufacturers that was very well entrenched decided to change his protocol to DMP.
Yeah.
And everybody goes, "What's that? What's with that?" So, but on the flip side, ABB are putting MQTT Sparkplug natively in their new XIO
Yes.
product line, and they're backporting it to their legacy Total Flow computers. So
Yeah.
there's if you look around, I think there's the technology anywhere you want to look for that.
So if I'm avoiding this kind of, I mean, sometimes you inherit this black hole.
Oh yeah,
Right. Sometimes it's inherited. So there's you can still exercise what I'm calling the same playbook pieces to do this, even if you inherit it, or if you're having to pay back this technical debt, right, that you have. So you can do that. So step one is, hey, you've got the edge of network collection, right? Do that. Second is your strategic piece for decoupling, and then third, I mean, is that leveraging things like MQTT now? As you move into maybe I want to take this data to the cloud a lot quicker.
Yeah, I think. I mean, and again, we're seeing that proven in the industry today. Is that MQTT? Is you and I both know is prevalent, totally prevalent in data center.
Right.
It may not be Sparkplug, but it's MQTT, and
Right.
then we've got the tools to convert that to Sparkplug as required.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of technology out there that we can take advantage of that with.
In recent time, where have you seen? Does each vertical have the same level of technical debt, or in your mind, is there one that seems to be maybe it seems to be more? It seems to be heavier.
Yeah, well, from my perspective,
Yeah.
and I was quite surprised, but the project that we did for the state of Indiana, I was kind of blown away by manufacturing.
Yeah.
I just thought that, if you have PLCs, you would have them networked, and you would go to these huge manufacturing plants, and yeah, there was a PLC sitting there, and it was all by itself, and it had its own little screen, and then you went to the next cell and had its own little screen, and
Right.
nothing was networked together at all. I think oil and gas were probably ahead.
Yeah.
But on the flip side of that is we've got enough legacy out there that it is creating the black holes within oil and gas.
Yeah. So
I guess really we're going from a complete black matter, nothing there, to you had something there, you go to a black hole, and then where do you go from there?
Yeah, exactly. So, you've seen that, Arlen. So strategically, where do I take it? I'm a producer in West Texas. I have 500 wells. I've inherited these black hole systems that are sitting out there. We've said connect at the edge, deploy a decoupling strategy, leverage some open standards or some standards, MQTT being one. And as you and I both know, the next step in a lot of cases, I mean, I love, of course, ignition, because I can stand that up to any DCS. I'll give you an example. When I went to Howard Energy, they had a rail facility, and they paid quite an amount of money for plant packs. And it was an overdone DCS platform, Rockwell platform, that wasn't talking to anything except some Rosemount tank sensors, the PLC itself, and at best maybe a couple of that. I don't think they were Coriolis meters at all, and some pumps units. That's it. It wasn't a lot. So what we did was we took ignition and stood it up. Now, granted, we connected via OPCOA to begin.
Yeah.
But we needed that right away to start talking. Once we did that, within hours, we had a quick definition from the PLC. After that, it was connect to the railcar ticketing, connect to and drop a on-logic edge, drop an on-logic device so that we can pick up railcar information and start doing collection on railcar. And then from there, it was now we want to integrate other legacy items that were out there, steam systems that were 4 to 20 milliamp signals pushed out from steam and compression. Bring that in, integrate that. So you had these black hole pieces that were sitting there. You integrated, and we stood up ignition within hours. And within 6 weeks, there were 6 different mobile apps built in perspective. And it was so fast. I guess my point is that we kind of pushed those. We saw this and pushed it real quick, and it was easier than that was expected. I guess is my point. So if I'm coming back to this 500 well producer in West Texas, I guess what I'm really saying is it's not out of reach, right? It's not out of reach for somebody to do something like this and get themselves out of some of these technical debts that they're in.
Oh, absolutely. And even some of the existing legacy DCS systems, Honeywell TDC 3000,
right?
Those are still, I mean, they're good at what they do, right?
Right.
But we're making a lot of inroads in getting ignition behind them to actually get because their legacy. I mean, come on, a TDC 3000 came out in 1985. I mean, they're doing what they're supposed to do. They're doing closed loop control and things like that.
Right.
But now people are starting to. We've made a lot of inroads. We're starting to like creep in behind the DCS and not doing anything dangerous, but just connecting to a PLC that's never been connected to. And again, the LoRaWAN valve position for a DCS operator is great. He doesn't have to run out and check his valve alignments every time they're going to do a new run, things like that.
Right.
So you can start picking and choosing how you start migrating and taking advantage of the technology that's out there today.
Yeah. So Arlen, after that part on the strategic portion, and let's say they're implementing something like MQTT and ignition, how easy is it to get data to the cloud? Is that reachable for somebody?
So once you've got it in ignition, right now, I think that Snowflake is the right data cloud platform.
Right.
They really don't rub anybody wrong, because if you're an Azure shop, they sit on top of Azure. If you're an AWS shop, they sit on top of AWS. It might be surprising, if you're OT, to actually ask IT, because we're finding that Snowflake is typically might be there and you didn't even know it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, then it's really easy. Anything that you've got in ignition, we now have the technology to get it into Snowflake, single source of truth, 100% fidelity. We're not dropping anything to try to conform to somebody else's notion of a digital twin or anything like that. And then, it's if you have an IT department that's wanting to run LLMs, predictive maintenance, AI, dashboarding, Tableau, Power BI, all of those are pretty much plug-in available to you at that point.
Yeah, I've seen, being a Snowflake partner, I've seen the tools that are available in Snowpark, that are, I call them out of the box tools. They're already available. You mentioned earlier, Snowflake as the data cloud, also has, you always use the words SQL on steroids. So that
Yeah.
makes sense to me because I'm getting that contextualized data into a SQL standard. I can query the data. It's very native to SQL. You can connect to that. We can deploy dashboard pieces to that. There's Streamlit that comes available inside of Snowpark, and there is large language model capability and some machine learning modeling that's done.
Right. And so, people, if they're coming to ICC this year, Travis Cox, he's already built some fantastic screens in Ignition.
Yeah.
So again, if you have that data and other data in Snowflake, well, it's an SQL database.
Yeah.
So you use a JDBC connector into Ignition Cloud Edition, and now you've got your dashboarding tool there that you might already be familiar with.
Yeah. Arlen, is there any potential? I noticed that I don't know if Cirruslink's got its GCP injector. Is that the case too?
No? GCP quit. They took down their MQTT engine. So we are looking at I think they have a new PubSub thing.
Okay.
But we haven't, it is surprising. GCP has started to pick up here lately, which before it was like zero demand on it, but all of a sudden now it's starting to gain some traction.
Yeah. So I was trying to draw that parallel that they're starting to do that. So, Arlen, if someone was looking for a way or a playbook to kind of help them out, I mean, you've been doing this a long time. I'm taking this from the perspective of a West Texas producer that is not Chevron, isn't a regional player, and a lot of times they've got a production field and they're considering some short. They've got some cycled merger and acquisitions in their regional area. They are doing some new wells that are in inventory. For them, direct them a little bit. I mean, you've been doing this a while. It's simple. You've already said it. Data at the edge, right? Have that decoupling strategy, and a lot of them, they're doing dual duty on the IT OT side. Leverage Ignition. You can connect to the cloud real simple. What other steps can they take in your mind?
That pretty much entails it. I mean, really, with what you're with that type of a use case scenario, you've got your data now. And again, we keep talking about the cloud.
Yeah.
If you get your again, it's back to operational excellence.
Yeah.
If you get the data into Ignition and its visualization and its reporting is good enough, there's, I think right now, I believe there's a bit too much hype in getting data to the cloud, and
right.
I think it's a good intentions,
right?
But I think we're all creating data swamps that people are paying for and don't really know why they're up there.
You're right, and you said something interesting. Just thinking, with Ignition, you can leverage Ignition and still create, aside from having a tag provider, you can put Ignition out there and still have users hit with security port 8088 and still leverage perspective.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So right out of the box. I think that's people forget that you can do that.
Well, and if you look, CHS, Jayhawk Pipeline, was a Firebrand Award winner here a couple of years ago, and they definitely have leveraged Snowflake, leveraged all of that, and it's a pretty cool use case on just being, they're an oil and gas company, but they're also into agriculture, they're into shipping, all of that, and that use case video on the Inductive Automation website, they had a legacy system. Just like Plains Midstream, they went through all of the just due diligence, if you will. And once the due diligence is done, the actual implementation is pretty quick.
Yeah. Yeah. So Arlen, you've given us some prescription here. It's not, I think for us, it's an easy, I call it an easy playbook, not necessarily to transform, but for connected operations is very simple. Kind of just one last thing I want to ask you, because we're coming to a close here. What do you believe, if I'm an OT leader in these regional players or energy players, what do you think they can do that is in terms of working with teams and convincing them that, hey, this is something you can do, right?
Well, one thing, again, the advantage that we've got with that playbook is that there are a ton of videos on Ignition's website where what we're talking about has been done.
Yeah.
It's been proven. I think the advantage that you've got with Ignition is that so many people, like you said, so many Fortune 100 and Fortune 500 companies already have it.
Yeah.
But it's the fact that there's not a lack of information.
Yeah.
You can go out there, you can download it, you can run it for free. It's very, very transparent on what you can do.
Yeah.
Now, inductive automation, Cirruslink ourselves, we don't manufacture equipment,
Right.
but we enable it.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I think that's the spark right there, is the enablement, Arlen, that you've provided over the years, and so is the Cirruslink team, in conjunction with Ignition and other key partners like Opto22, that kind of deliver that to help producers, energy, manufacturing, whoever that is, kind of target a project, take that small, even if it's a proof of concept and you're in the black hole, you can get out of it. Like it's possible, even if it's not greenfield, like you said, if it's just a proof of concept and you want to stand it up right next to it, Ignition per se, for free, test it, learn from it, then you can do that too. And you can fail. You can even fail. In other words, you're going to learn things. You're going to learn some lessons and have lots of success at the same time. But you can learn without spending a whole lot of money up front and sinking costs.
Yep. That's it. That, like I was saying, that we get huge projects every day that'll come in and we don't know where they came from. Nobody's ever talked to them, and they've done a complete project with Ignition, and now they're ready to push the go button.
Yeah. And Arlen, I want to mention one thing. Our group, which is OpSite Energy, is a partnership between some veterans in the industry, myself, Jeff Perry, who's the CEO of OpSite Energy. CNX Resources is one of our key partners, that has given us a runway to do remote operations from here in Cannonsburg. And then we've got a technology partner right now, which is IDM, Industrial Data Management. So you have lots of kind of in-house folks that can work together. I know I collaborate with you. Mm-hmm. We collaborate with Ignition, with each group at Ignition. We love products from the team at Opto22. And so I do want to mention that, one of the things we do here is also remote operations. So if there is a group that's out there, whether you're in data center, manufacturing, water, wastewater, energy, that there's the potential to have remote assets monitored and tested right from Cannonsburg. Yep. So that's a potential there. But, any last thing, Arlen, it's so good to have you here. I don't like to, it's going to be tough to let you go because I know you're a busy guy, man. But I appreciate what you're doing. And, we look forward to seeing you at ICC. Yeah. A quick plug at the OpSite Energy and the Energy Tech podcast will be at ICC every day. And so if you're listening in and you want to participate, look for us, because we want to give you some time in the podcast booth. Arlen, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
I appreciate it.
Don't forget to like and subscribe us, and we're going to have some key links that you can share. Like Arlen said, there's some great white papers and info that's available from Ignition. I am your host today and co-host, Mike Plotis, with the Energy Tech podcast here in Cannonsburg from OpSite Energy. Thanks for joining us. Arlen, thanks.
Thanks.